Over 25 million rounds. 2.5 million fights.
Boxing fans joining us around the world.
250,000 championship bouts.
And remember, this is a man who has been stopped, and he's got him in one. What a great right hand by Hay.
But only 25 punches will truly never be forgotten.
Anything other than a jab.
Very close, and there's the power.
Welcome back to the greatest knockout series of all time, punches that will never be forgotten.
He hadn't challenged me with their somewhat primitive skills. They're just as good as dead.
On this series, we dig through our personal archive to unearth 25 of the greatest punches ever landed in a boxing ring, or on the odd occasion, outside of it. We're up to part 4 in this series now, which brings the KO tally to an even 100. However, don't be mistaken for a drop in quality. Boxing has a rich history with many great stories and knockouts to accompany them. Here now, Boxing Legends TV presents the top 25 punches that will never be forgotten. Part 4. We've all heard the rumors of what Mike Tyson was doing to professional boxers at a very young age in sparring. A sign-in register at the Catskill Gym has documented a multitude of heavyweight contenders wanting no part of, at the time, 15-year-old Iron Mike.
Move your head, jab and flip, flip and jab.
However, one man by the name of Carl the Truth Williams appeared to have some success over the New York native and wasn't shy about telling the story.
The very next day, I came in the gym with a different attitude towards him. I went into the ring and I busted him up.
Well, he's probably like 14, 15 years old.
A fully developed Tyson got his hands on Williams a few years later and buried the hatchet, so to speak. In 2012, American featherweight Gary Russell Jr. was being tipped as the next big star of the lower weight divisions. He is regarded to this day as one of the fastest fighters in the world, but he isn't trying to win fights by pity-patty boxing. This guy has serious intent behind each punch, a trait that was on full display when he met Roberto Castaneda in November of that year.
Feel the need to get inside. 3-punch combination again. Larry touched him with the left hand, the body, and the right hand. What a shot! And just like that,
your heart will fail you. Trust me.
Who are you, a doctor?
See if it was on the road,
Your mouth will get you into
I'd deal with
trouble.
you.
As each year passes, the British heavyweight title fight from 2015 becomes increasingly relevant and impressive. Anthony Joshua, 14-0 with 14 KOs. Dillian White, 16-0 with 13 KOs.
So I said, all right, cool. I'm quite respectful. But if Dillian steps in the ring with me, trust me, you best believe me, none of these heavyweights are on my level.
At the time, the bout was seen as nothing more than a grudge match to settle a score that had been brewing since the amateur days. But in 2019, these two are regarded as top 5 fighters in the division.
Already, the legs don't look good at all. And Joshua just grins at him. And White is starting to come apart here already.
White's got a hold. White's got a hold.
In what would go on to be one of the best British showdowns of the year, White rocked AJ early on, but couldn't finish the job. His gas tank was emptying by the 7th, and Joshua put him away in brutal fashion.
And as long as White returns fire once in a while,
Which he is doing. But look at the legs. There's a grin from White, but the legs are betraying him, and down he goes.
he's hurt. The way he went down.
Surely no way up here for Dillian White. It's stopped. It's over.
When you think of boxers from the Philippines, you think of Manny Pacquiao. A sad reality, considering one of the greatest super bantamweights from this generation was also a fellow Filipino.
If Donaire was a natural 147-pounder, who would be favored, him or Floyd Mayweather?
Nonito Donaire, a 5-weight world champion and winner of numerous awards such as the 2012 Writers Boxing Association Fighter of the Year. A man with electric hand speed and immaculate timing with his shots. Attributes his 2011 opponent, Fernando Montiel, will never forget.
This is Julian Jackson. 46 wins and 43 of them by knockout. That is 92%.
A quick YouTube search will tell you everything you need to know about Julian Jackson.
Other
the hardest punching junior middleweight today.
Considered by many as the hardest puncher in boxing history, with the highlight reel to back it up. He's already featured twice on this series. However, he really has a career stacked with amazing one-punch KOs.
And we are ready to get this fight underway from the Atlantic City Convention Center.
This pick against Terry Norris was indeed another one-punch knockout, but the ropes held him up for 2 more clean power shots that put him down and out without the need for a count.
Incredible knockout ratio of Jackson. Whoa! And then right in that, Terry Norris is gone. Unleashes a bomb in round number 2.
You know, I just like to say to Mike Tyson, man, you know, I could do it too, you know.
The legendary slugger Arturo Gatti will always be remembered for his classic encounters with Mickey Ward in the early 2000s.
As Mickey Ward pounds away, Ward back out, get it back!
However, people often forget just how technical of a boxer Arturo could be when he put his mind to it. His downfall was the roar of the crowd. Once he heard the fans, he never looked back.
Better when I do that. And he heard the roar of the crowd. That's really what changed him. No question.
A good example of the boxing brain behind the brute was back in February 2000 when he faced fellow American super lightweight Joey Gamache, an informed boxer coming off 10 straight victories.
A name with its own colorful place in boxing history.
Gatti hurt Gamache almost instantaneously and quickly turned into the ring bully thereafter.
Also looks so much bigger than he does. Yeah, he's got a 15-pound weight advantage. Every time he lands a shot, it's abundantly clear. Benji Estevez isn't. Right uppercut. And you see why we were worried about Joey Gamache.
Gamache suffered a career-ending injury in the fight, but thankfully made a recovery as the years progressed and worked for many years under the legendary coach Emmanuel Stewart at the Kronk Gym in Detroit.
I just need one punch. Only one. That's it.
Personally, I've never been a big fan of Canadian fight cards. It's a country that has produced some respectable talent over the years, but failed to match their top fighters with challenging competitors. Such fights are often branded as mismatches, and when you've been overmatched by fighting a man that carries the frightful power of a David Lemieux, it never ends well.
Got about 20 seconds to see if he can finish Gaona off. And a big right and a left, and oh, and Gaona's head just absolutely smashed off the canvas.
Thankfully, Gaona recovered fairly quickly, but has sadly met similar fates in fights thereafter.
Diamonds are forever like family and loyalty, or real rap songs like Cream.
It's not often that slick fighters like Pernell Whitaker feature on lists like these, but with the recent passing of the legend, we felt it was fitting to put this hidden gem KO of his somewhere in the series. It's not his greatest night in the ring in terms of legacy, simply a reminder of how timing really is the key to scoring a great KO.
Oh my, whoa, look out. If he gets up, it'll be a miracle. What a knockout.
Alexander Povetkin's KO over Johan Duhaupas is one of the most controversial moments in recent years that barely anyone speaks about.
This man was considered as the boogeyman of the division.
To cut a long story short, in 2016 the Russian heavyweight was supposed to fight the WBC champion Deontay Wilder, but failed a drug test just a few weeks prior to the bout. A year later, his next fight was cancelled with the former champ Bermane Stiverne after, this time, both men failed a drug test to some degree. However, this time, instead of the whole event being cancelled, a late replacement was made and the fringe contender Johan Duhaupas decided a payday was worth it to fight the juiced-up power puncher, something I'm sure he regrets in retrospect. Johan was out cold for a solid 10 minutes, but thankfully made a full recovery and is still fighting to this day.
It's a beautiful summer's day. The breeze is stupendous.
I wouldn't go as far as to say Chris Eubank Sr. is a meme, but he certainly provokes the culture more than the average person.
The world is a stage, and we are all actors.
His bizarre persona isn't just something that came in later life. During his fighting years in the 90s, he would always make headlines for much more than just boxing.
I really like the boots and waistcoat and the countrified tie, and it makes me feel royal, you know, it makes me feel good.
That being said, a Eubank fight wouldn't be a Eubank fight if it weren't for his in-ring antics.
We will see when the bell rings. Eubank almost
glides out of the ring, struts out of his corner. The first punch he throws. Count is 7. He's not going to make it. He hasn't. Oh, that's amazing.
You are mine, you belong to me. I am the man.
Canelo Alvarez is famous today for being one of the most well-rounded fighters in the world. Battles with Triple G, Miguel Cotto, and Floyd Mayweather Jr. has escalated the Mexican to superstardom in the boxing world, and he is considered by many as pound for pound the best in the sport.
You can go anywhere with him across the globe and people are going to know who Canelo Alvarez is.
Canelo has achieved all these great feats while only being age 29. He turned pro at 15 years old and was knocking out fully grown men back-to-back in Mexico before he ventured to the States to take on the sport's toughest competitors. The first fighter he took on who had genuine credibility in the sport was the former world champion Carlos Baldomir. Baldomir fought the who's who in boxing but had never been knocked out. Canelo was hell-bent on becoming the first.
This crowd have come to see him, and Baldomir has taken tremendous punishment. And this is dazzling.
Down goes Baldomir on a rocket left hook. And the count is finished, and he knocked Baldomir out. Not a TKO, a knockout.
That was a dazzling finish.
It's no secret that we at Boxing Legends TV regard the former WBC middleweight champion Gerald McClellan as one of perhaps even the greatest pound-for-pound punchers in boxing history. His short career was defined by brutal early KOs, with most men falling in 2 or 3 rounds, and the great Julian Jackson being no exception.
Many good fighters now. This is new gentleman from Detroit, Gerald McClellan, I believe the name. I've seen some tapes of him, just from highlights, and he seems like a dynamo.
For the most part, Gerald was a dedicated body puncher. He holds the record for the fastest knockout in middleweight title history using this technique. However, it's his body blow that made James Williamson curl up and crawl for safety that made the list.
So far, it's Jones's power over Hill's jab. Whoa! Right to the body, down unheard of. Unheard of.
That's one of the few hard body shots I can recall.
When you think of the jab, you think of Larry Holmes. Body punch, Mike McCallum. Left hook, Joe Frazier. And the uppercut seems unanimously in favor of Mike Tyson. However, I still think Lennox Lewis was extremely underrated for his own uppercuts.
To a blinded left eye. Oh, what an uppercut!
For instance, his vicious shot on Vitaly Klitschko still bears in the minds of boxing fans today. He knocked out Michael Grant with one and nearly took Evander's head clean off during their rematch.
Well, Evander Holyfield won't back down from anybody. Uppercut lands for Lewis. Holyfield misses the left hook. Lewis lands the uppercut again.
However, it's the combo of uppercuts he landed on Justin Fortune that makes the list. This is one of my personal favorite slow-mo replays, so check it out.
Fortune is caught here in terrible trouble, and it stopped. Oh, it stopped. It hit the floor. Roy Francis had decided that that was enough. In round 4, a series of punches, a cluster of classy uppercuts.
Big city and the country state say we the fattest because the food here tastes great.
This isn't the first time Butterbean is featured on the series, and it sure as hell won't be the last.
Steak and lobster for brunch, I like big meals.
During the late 90s and early 2000s, this 400-pound wrecking machine was laying out every journeyman that would dare to enter the ring with him. His rise in popularity led to a bunch of TV and film cameos, the most popular of which was his crushing knockout of Johnny Knoxville when the Jackass guys decided to be fitting for their new movie for a pro boxer to KO one of the members.
Today we're going to do a little boxing.
Give me one to lose. There you go.
Butterbean.
The Cuban heavyweight bruiser, Jorge Luis Gonzalez, was a man hated by pretty much everybody that met him.
I love it when the audience starts to boo me. It riles me up even more. I'm the type of person that if I know that I rub you the wrong way, I'm going to do something to piss you off even more. If you don't like the way I laugh, I'm going to laugh louder just to piss you off.
He's remembered today for more than his ridiculous haircut, however. In 1987, he defeated both Riddick Bowe and Lennox Lewis to win a gold medal in the Pan American Games, after which he fled Cuba and started fighting professionally in the States.
No particular reason, they just are. There's Gonzalez's record, 23 wins, no losses, 22 KOs.
He built his record up to 23-0 with 20 knockouts before facing his old rival from the amateurs, Riddick Bowe. Bowe was a different animal these 7 years later and dished out a brutal beatdown on the Cuban, knocking him out in the 6th and landing a few shots as he was falling for good measure.
Big advantage. There it goes. That should do it. That should do it. That's the first time Gonzalez has been down as a pro. Another terrific right-hand shot for Riddick Bowe.
I was here to please tonight. I wanted to do it for the people. A lot of people despise Jorge Gonzalez, and I wanted to, impress you. I wanted you to say, well, Riddick Bowe is back.
David Haye has got to be the most straight-talking badass in boxing history. Whether it's his brutal honesty on what he's planning to do to his opponent, or explaining intricately how he would deal with a house burglar.
If someone burgles your house and you attack and you knock them out, are you going to apologize them for knocking them out? No, you're not. You're going to stomp on their head, just like any normal person would.
David, whether he'd like to admit it or not, certainly has a short fuse. He often comes across as the calmest guy in the room without a care in the world. But anyone that even has the slightest interest in psychology can tell that this man is a ticking time bomb. In February 2012, the British heavyweight Derek Chisora was coming off a surprisingly close match with the WBC champion Vitaly Klitschko. At the post-fight press conference, David Haye emerged from the crowd, spewing verbal abuse at both men.
3 fights in a row. Yeah, that's fighting. Excuse me. What? I lost a unification fight.
Vitaly laughed it off, but Derek stood his ground and confronted the former two-weight champ. Haye wasn't there to play to the cameras. He lashed out at Derek almost instantaneously, breaking a beer bottle he had clenched in his fist on Del Boy's face.
You want to fight me?
Surprisingly, the two are good friends today and even have a close working relationship. Next up, we have a rather slept-on knockout that Manny Pacquiao performed back in the Philippines during the earlier stages of his career.
Traitor, merciless Manny Pacquiao!
The thing that makes it so memorable for me is the fact that his opponent, Fossen 3K Battery, was literally punched 2 foot in the air with both feet off the ground. A bizarre instance, almost like something out of a Rocky movie.
Brought down Fossen in this round. Ito na naman. Goodbye. And that's it. It's over. It's over. Manny Pacquiao, sensational knockout. Winner out lang yung kanan. Grabe ang kaliwa. Pumunta pa rin siya sa kaliwa niya.
I think it's going to be an absolute barnstormer of a fight, and sometimes, heart is definitely going to come into it at some point.
Macklin versus Moore, a great domestic showdown for the mid-2000s, a back-and-forth slugfest that ended with one of them flat on their face.
Billy Graham, Kerry Kay's in the team. Oh, that could be curtains. He won't get up from that. 10th round, Macklin's out. Fight's over. No celebration for Jamie Moore.
Andre Ward is one of those fantastic boxers from the modern era that rarely gets the props he deserves due to being in the shadow of stars like Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao.
Has been beating him from the very beginning. I'll be surprised if Green has even won 2 rounds.
The all-round, close-to-perfect boxer never really had highlight punching power, which is what made his clash with the crusher Sergey Kovalev even more surprising. The two had already met a year prior where Ward edged out a very narrow decision. This time around, the former Olympic gold medalist sent the ringside judges home early.
That's why Ward's coming at him now. Oh, there you go.
Right hand by Ward.
That hurt him bad.
Front to the fight. Wobbles Kovalev.
Bad.
And Tony Hicks is going to stop the fight. Stopping the fight in the 8th round.
Ward retired after the fight with a perfect record of 32-0. One of those guys that I think will be appreciated much more as time progresses.
Let me ask you a question. Can I get on the pound-for-pound list now at the top? Is it possible?
Prince Nassim Ahmed is one of the most brilliant but completely outrageous boxers in the sport's history.
It's 1 in a million. I know I'm the best in the world. There ain't a featherweight out there can take that pain.
Loved by some, hated by others, the Marmite of the boxing world.
He say he's the best, I say I'm the best. I would like to fight Prince Nassim.
One criticism the featherweight receives regularly from his haters is the fact his resume was rather weak before he faced and ultimately lost to Marco Antonio Barrera. True boxing aficionados know that the reality is Naseem Hamed has one of the best featherweight resumes of his era. Countless champs stepped up, but were completely dominated and embarrassed before being brutally knocked out. Augie Sanchez, a world champion famous for defeating Floyd Mayweather Jr. in the amateurs, is one of those fighters that will never forget the brutal punching power that Hamed possessed.
Naz lands the left hand to the face and to the body. Naz laughing as Sanchez again slides down the front of him. Left, right, right. And once again, you see the awesome punching power of Prince Naseem Hamed. And that's going to be the end of the fight.
Hamed broke his hand in multiple places due to the punch, which ultimately led to it being the last great one that he ever landed. Tyson Fury, at the time of this upload, is regarded by the large majority of boxing fans worldwide as the best heavyweight in the world.
Vladimir, you're 40-year-old. How can you beat me, 27-year-old? You're getting knocked out, mate.
At 6'9", he defies the model of the average behemoth. He has fast hands, fast feet, the heart of a lion, and, despite popular belief, also has the power to keep the very best of him at bay.
Oh, lovely right from Tyson Fury again. Right hook's got him.
There is one chink in the armor, however, defending overhand rights from men notably shorter than he is. He has suffered 2 knockdowns from this punch in the past, but has always managed to regain his composure and remain undefeated. Let's take a look.
Round 2 underway in that first round, according to CompuBox. Fury. Oh, he's knocked down! He's knocked down! Cunningham has floored Fury.
That's the punch right there. Steve Cunningham is looking to land that overhand right.
Before Klitschko and Tyson, there was Ollie and Lewis. Before those guys, we had Dempsey and Tunney. But the first true great heavyweight of the Queensberry Rules era was none other than the Galveston giant, Jack Johnson.
Of the 28 heavyweight champions we've had, Jack Johnson would certainly be in the top 3 of all time.
Boxing was the last of Johnson's problems. During the 1910s, African-American citizens could well be killed just for mentioning a black versus white contest in boxing. Johnson, on the other hand, dated white women and forced white men to compete with him in the ring due to the pure quality that he possessed. If the other fighters wouldn't accept the challenge, they were scared, and even the racist sports media of the time would print the same narrative.
Johnson's biggest break came when the vacated heavyweight title fell into the hands of the lackluster Canadian Tommy Burns.
So Johnson says, now I can get my shot. He follows Burns to England. He doesn't get it. He follows Burns to Australia. Burns has a couple matches and says, what the hell? Why not fight Johnson?
To Tommy Burns' credit, he accepted Johnson's challenge, something he would quickly regret. Johnson played with him, threw him around, roughed him up, and his physical presence was vastly superior.
Here in round 14, Johnson rushes in, lands an uppercut, 3 left hooks, a tremendous barrage of punches, lefts and rights which have Burns helpless. At this very moment, in the early seconds of round 14...
Has the video crashed? No. That's where the film was cut later during editing. Tommy obviously hit the ground, and a few moments later, the police of all people intervened and called off the contest. That's how the great Jack Johnson became the first black heavyweight champion.
Hi, I'm Mike Tyson, heavyweight champ of the world. Let's talk boxing.
We thought we'd end the video with one of the many crazy Mike Tyson stories from the 80s. Sadly, there's no footage of the incident, but I think Mike sums up the story pretty well. Enjoy.
I would see him again. This time it would be at 4 a.m. in the morning at Harlem at the most famous and luxurious Dapper Dan boutique. So I'm there feeling good. All of a sudden, my cool is interrupted when this uncouth motherfucker walks in looking just like this. He didn't have the shorts and the gloves, of course, but he had the sweatpants and he had no shirt. Mitch comes down like this. What you doing in my neighborhood, you bitch ass? I'm trying to stay cool, right? Because I'm in this white world. I got endorsements. So I say, now, Mitch, what are you doing? Now, trust me, Mitch, by all means, I don't really believe this is advantageous to your health. And you need to proceed to the nearest exit immediately. Okay, so I just get mad, and Mitch said, F you say, and it just slipped in there, right? But it didn't turn out cool. I broke my hand in this face, right? And this is what you never knew about the fight. You all knew about the altercation, but this is what you didn't know. Mitch was hiring some powerful that gave him like alien-like strength, right? And Mitch comes, right? Miss Combs. This is down again.